But for those of you who don't know me, my name's Dave. I am a coach, a mentor, and a speaker. I have a background in healthcare, being a nurse many years ago, and now being a podiatrist. Hey, Mike, how you doing, mate? Good to see you, big bro. And I've been working in healthcare for a quarter of a century, which is probably why I look so old. And that has influenced my approach to people and my approach to learning and development. And during the last, it's been now 4 years since I sold my practice, but probably during the last 12 months, I've really had a bigger focus on mindfulness. And what I wanted to do for this first episode was tell you kind of the story as to how I ended up going into that place. How did I end up with that kind of mindfulness thing? And I want to tell you the story about how I found the gap between stimulus and response. Now, throughout my life, for as long as I can remember, anger has been quite a powerful emotion. I remember how it kind of started. It started around my teenage years. There was a big flip from me being I was 6'2". You know, I as a teenager, I was quite a tall lad anyway, and there were things which happened during my teenage years, which I'm working through at the moment, which really are the times where I identified that actually there was a problem, and I became a person who used anger in order to communicate with the world. And that anger, and I'm not going to go into the details of those teenage things at the moment. I'll talk about those on subsequent lives. I've touched on it before on various things. But that anger kind of followed me right the way through until about 2015. And what would happen is something would happen, I would react to it, I would get angry, something which would get broken. And invariably, the person who ended up getting physically hurt was me. The people who got emotionally hurt were everyone around me. And I would go through this pattern of anger, withdrawal, fear, and then it would go on and on and on again. And this went on for many years. I had some CBT in 2015. I had some CBT in about 2006, 2007, which I found really useful. Helped me to kind of pick up on certain triggers and got me to look at certain patterns as to why I would respond in a particular way. And that helped me for a long while. But the anger still continued. And I got to 2015 where I was given an ultimatum, and I've talked about this on a video I did in 2018, where I went live on stage and talked about it, where my wife turned around to me and said, "I've had enough of this. Just get out." And threw me out the house. This is October of 2015. I'd already been diving into personal development. I'd already been doing shelf development. I'd been reading. I'd been working out more about me and where the troubles were and where the issues were. And that incident of being thrown out, that challenge of being thrown out, for me made a huge difference. And I'm really grateful to have my friend Daniel Hill, who is just an amazing coach, who I reached out to, and he helped me out massively at that point. And there was a real challenge for me to actually improve who I was. And during all that work on me, the conversations I was having, I found that between stimulus and response, I'm just going to share my screen, just show this here, that I found that the way I was reacting was that something would happen, there'd be a stimulus, and I was responding to it. And in fact, to be more precise, I was reacting to it. I was insistent that I had no control over it. I was insistent that there was absolutely nothing I could do about it at all. And kind of imagine what that feels like, that you feel you have no control over your emotions. You feel you have no control over everything going on around you. And that stimulus to response thing became quite powerful. That stimulus to reaction thing became quite powerful. But what I realized when I did the work is that actually there is this gap between stimulus and response. And even someone of 6'2" and however many stone I weigh could squeeze into that space. And that I had a choice. I didn't have to go down this route of something happened and I growled at it and broke something. I could actually go, hold on a minute, what's going on here? And I tried it, and I used it, and I played with it, and it became a really, really useful tool for me. And like like all things, you don't have the language to describe it. But what I did have was I had evidence from my kids that they would say things to me like, "We prefer this version of Daddy. We like this version of Daddy. He's better than the old version of Daddy," and that was nice. So for me, it was a real win all round. But back then, I you can only describe the things which you're experiencing with the language which you have. And at the time, I didn't realize that this thing had a name. And doing the kind of the mindfulness stuff, and I did an 8-week mindfulness for stress course last year when I started to look more at how I could use it in my practice as a coach. And I found that it had a name, and this name was response flexibility. Now that for me is it's a beautiful phrase, response flexibility. Flexibility in your response. And everyone has that opportunity to do it. And I love that. I got very excited when I found that out and went, oh, this thing which I've been playing with, this thing which I've been experiencing actually does have a name and it is a thing. And there's a psychologist called Daniel Goleman who talks about cognitive control. And for me, when I think about cognitive control, what I'm thinking about is this same kind of situation. And it's a form of emotional intelligence. It's being aware of your emotions, what they mean, how you respond to them, how you react to them, and looking at ways in which you can intelligently play with that. And I love that. Response flexibility, cognitive control, whatever you want to call it, for me has been, and I use it as a coachy term, cheesy as it is, transformational. It's made a huge difference to me and how I interface with the world and interact with people around me, and how I am as a person and who I am as a person. And yeah, for me, do I get this right all the time? No. Anger still sits there. Anger still pops up. How I deal with that is very, very different. And it's not to say that I don't have anger and frustration. I just have the ability to kind of go, okay, this is what I see going on. Where do I want this to go? I can steer my direction much, much easier. And you might be watching this now and thinking, well, okay, that's brilliant. Good for you. Excellent. You had that going on and you've got better at it. Wonderful. What can I do with this information? What can you do with that information? And my invitation to you, and when I was doing the lives each day, it would be, here's my invitation. You can choose whether you look at this or whether you don't. That's entirely your choice. But my invitation to you is to think about, where is the gap in your world which you can squeeze into? Where is the slide 2? Where is the gap, and what can you do with that gap? Because you will have something going on in your life. You'll have something going on in your world. It might be personal, it might be a relationship, it might be a work thing. And what happens is that you're in a position where you've maybe reacted to it. Something's happened, you've reacted to it. Where in your world is the gap? Where in your world is the space that you can squeeze into and change absolutely everything? And that's my invitation to you, is to look at that gap. And I'd love to know where that gap is for you. And I'd love to know what difference being able to squeeze into that gap and change the outcome would mean for you. And to go cheesy on coaching phrases, what would be possible for you? And I'd love to know. I'd love to know what that is for you, because for me, it's been transformational. For me, it's changed everything. I'm not the same person that I was 7 years ago when I started with this stuff. And I imagine I won't be the same person in 7 years' time. But what I would invite you to do is look at where that gap is, but also pop it in the comments. Wherever you're watching this, are you watching us on replay? Are you watching it live? Are you watching it on LinkedIn, my personal profile, my business profile, wherever it is? Come along and let me know. Where's the gap? What does it mean for you? Tag me in it, and maybe there's something I can help with. But there is a gap between stimulus and response. It is tiny, but you can squeeze yourself in there and you can manipulate it, and you can do all kinds of cool things with it, because what goes on in the world, what goes on in your mind, doesn't always have to end up going down one particular route. You have the control in that. And I'd love to know what that means to you. See you later.